very short intro into Adolfo. He is associate professor at the university, so you can imagine that he teaches a lot. And one of the languages that he likes, loves, maybe he'll explain it more, is Elixir. And Adolfo was already here once on our meetups, explaining some stuff related to learning Elixir. And today he's gonna do it again with the topic of teaching functional programming with Elixir. So for any of you who would like to explore a teaching space to spread the Elixir into a bigger community, which is very welcomed, then this is for you. So Adolfo, I hope you're here with us, so you can show yourself, turn on the microphone, and the stage is yours.
Thanks, Simon. I don't know how to pronounce your name perfectly, but let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen? I believe. Is it working? Oh, okay. So thank you very much for the invitation to talk here. I'm going to talk about my experience teaching functional programming with Elixir. I'm going to take a look to the right side in the chat in case you have any questions. And let's try to be as interactive as possible. And of course, we will have questions in the end. So my name is Adolfo Neto. I work at a university called UTFPR. Lots of consonants, and this is my webpage, adolfont.github.io. The explanation for the Adolfo NT is that in every social network where when I tried Adolfo Neto, it was not available, so I removed the E and the O, and then I got the account. So I was born here, top left, Maceió, Alagoas, a very beautiful, very hot city, lots of beautiful beaches, and I studied here, down left, Federal University of Alagoas. Then, after some time, I did my PhD at the big city, which is São Paulo, at the University of São Paulo. And after some time, I came to live here in Curitiba, here, top right. It's a beautiful city, much colder than Maceió, no beach. And I work at UTFPR. And I'm also the co-creator and co-host of the Elixir Foco podcast, a podcast in Portuguese about Elixir. I believe it's the only active podcast about Elixir which is not in English. If I'm wrong, please let me know. I'd like to know if there is any other podcast which is not in English, which is active. I know there are some inactive ones, but active that has been posting new episodes. For instance, this year, I don't know of any other. And of course, there are many in English. And I also have this YouTube channel in English, Elixir, Erlang, and the Bean. A fun fact is that the most popular video there, it's about Lean, not Elixir or Erlang. But there is this talk about installing Elixir and Erlang, this talk by Laura Castro on property-based testing, where the examples are in Elixir, and also this talk about this video about Livebook. Okay, this is my webpage, some more information about me. I have also other podcasts, and I'm organizing, let me see if, yes, it's here. I'm organizing Elixir Fortaleza Conf, a conference of the Erlang ecosystem, organized by Elixir Foco and also ILUG Ceará, and the department, the info where I work, the graduate program where I work, PPGCA, also Federal University of Ceará, Department of Computing, UFC Virtual. So it's going to be next week. Okay, let's jump into the subject of this talk. I'm going to teach a course. It's going to be maybe the third or the fourth time, called Introduction to Functional Programming. It's a course offered by the Graduate Program in Applied Computing here at UTFPR. It's intended for graduate students, but some undergraduate students have attended and can attend. Some professionals, for instance, professionals that, oh, maybe I want to do a master's. Then they attend this course and decide if it's a good idea or not. I believe most of you here that are watching this talk are professionals, but maybe I'm wrong, but tell me in the chat if some of you is still an undergraduate student or a graduate student. And this year is going to start on October the 5th, and it will end on December 20th. And it's going to be a tough time for people that live in Poland, because it's going to be maybe, I don't know, after midnight. So if you want to attend, there is this link here. It's going to be live, synchronous, so it's not. I wrote here that I expect that all students have their cameras turned on, because I had some experience in the past where it felt like I was talking to myself. That's not good most of the time. I want to be as interactive as possible. So the learning objectives of this course is I expect that after attending this course, and I'm not sure that I have been successful in the past, but I hope I will be this year, is that the students will be able to solve problems using a functional programming language of their choice. I choose Elixir as the main language, but the students can choose maybe Clojure or Erlang, but it's usually easier to use Elixir. And they must be able to, after the course, of course, to describe and discuss the main functional programming concepts. What's a function? What is a mathematical function? What is immutability? What's a state? And they have to be able to apply the main functional programming concepts in their programs. They have to be able to solve problems using a functional programming language, using the functional programming concepts. And I expect them to describe the main features of a concurrent functional programming language. Because, you see, this is only an introduction. It's not a long course on functional programming. And as Dave writes there, Dave wrote, you could scare them off by using Haskell. Yes, I don't like Haskell myself. Maybe it's only a matter of taste. I'm not saying it's better or worse than Elixir, but I love Elixir, and I'm not a big fan of Haskell. So that's why I prefer, and it's only an introduction. So the idea is to bring more people to the Elixir community. So I'd say, oh, this is Elixir, this is functional programming. Come to the community. Learn how to write a few programs in Elixir. So it's not going to go very deep. It's going to be an introduction. So my syllabus, is it syllabus or syllabus? I believe it's syllabus. It's functional programming. The idea of a syllabus is it's not going to be in that order necessarily. So it's a syllabus. So it's the topics we are going to cover, but not necessarily in that order. So functional programming, concepts, and main language. And of course, Haskell is going to be there because it's one of the main language, but there's also ML, Lisp. The first functional programming language that I had some exposure was Lisp. Then I learned ML. And then after some time, I learned Elixir. So here there are many points: functions, pattern matching, data structures and immutability, recursion, collection processing, lazy evaluation, control flow, project implementation, and overview of functional language for concurrence. Is anything important missing here? So this is my question to you as developers. Take a look. Is anything important missing? Is this order okay? So I'm saying I wrote in a given order. Maybe I can change that order. Maybe I could focus on control flow before recursion. So type in the chat if you want. I see there is a comment here. Oh, no, but it's not applied to my talk. Let's start the questions. So my question to you that you can answer now or later is, should we study mathematical functions? Because that's what I have been doing in the last editions of this course. First, I tell them, I explain to the students, this is a mathematical function. This is a discussion that initially is not related to programming. This is a function, and I say that usually when we are in the programming world, we say, oh, this is a pure function. But in mathematics, it's not pure. There is no impure function in mathematics. It's only a function or it's not a function. So my idea, and maybe you disagree with me, is that we should start by studying mathematical functions. And then later I say, oh, these are mathematical functions, but in computer science, we use the term functions to represent something that's not exactly a mathematical function. That's why we have this nomenclature that is, oh, this is a pure function and this is an impure function. When I started programming long time ago, I used Pascal, and in Pascal there were functions, and the functions in Pascal were computational functions. They were not mathematical functions. There were the functions and procedures, and the functions, they returned something, the procedures did not. So these are different concepts. I like to begin like that because I believe that as it is a graduate program, I cannot be. I already said that it's not to go. The course is not going to go very deep, but it can't be very shallow too. So I try to find a middle ground. If you go to books or even sites like Elixir School, and I'm not saying which is using which, but usually there are two different approaches. There's the approach where you teach how to define a function, and then you show that function being used. Or I prefer the first approach, which I learned from Bruce Tate, my friend from Roxio. So he first shows, oh, let's use a function. Like, oh, io.puts. io.puts is not a very good function to start with because it has some side effects, but other functions. You use a function that already exists, and then you say, oh, do you remember that we used some functions? Now you can define your own functions. Which is the better approach? I'm not saying that the best approach is to teach how to use a function first, but that's what I use. Another question that sometimes people might ask themselves is, should I start with anonymous functions first, and then after I explain how an anonymous functions work, then we say, oh, there is a module, and in this module, specifically for Elixir, because Elixir, if you want to have a named function in Elixir, you must define a module. So you have to say, oh, a module is a group of functions, and only in a module you can give a name to a function. So there is this choice. I choose to start with named functions, but you can disagree with me. Another good question is regarding pattern matching versus variable assignment. People that come from other non-functional programming languages, they probably learn how to do variable assignment, and they might think that the equals symbol in Elixir is variable assignment. But we know it is not. It's pattern matching. And here also we have two approaches, at least two approaches. Maybe there's some other that I don't know. There's the approach where we say, oh, let's do variable assignment and use equal. And then you say, oh, equals, it's not only for variable assignment. It can also work as pattern matching. And then you can teach pattern matching. Or you can start with pattern matching from the beginning, because pattern matching allows you to do something like 6 equals 6. And it's pattern matching, but there is no variable assignment. So I prefer to start, I try to think of my course as something that someone that doesn't know any other language can take. So in that case, I don't expect that person to know variable assignment. Maybe that person will learn for the first time pattern matching, and then when that person studies another language, oh, in JavaScript there is no pattern matching, but there is only variable assignment, which is a special case of pattern matching. What do you think? I see a comment by Dave. A output always returns okay, not something that depends on the input. Yes. Should we study currying in partial application? Because we know that apart from some libraries, like I believe there's a library, but by someone, I forgot the name of the library, where they implement currying and partial application, but it's not something that comes with Elixir. So in that case, I usually prefer to use Haskell. I say, oh, let's study a concept using another programming language, and there is this idea of currying and this idea of partial application, and then we go back to Elixir, where we don't have currying and partial application. That's my choice, but you could have a different choice. And this is a good question too, because when should we start? Oh, sorry. My phone is ringing. Yes. The problem it's going to start again, but okay. So the idea here let me, oh, done. Um, when should we start presenting higher order functions? Functions that receive, for instance, functions that receive another function as input, or that return a function as output. Maybe the right answer here is as later as possible, because if you can't solve some problems without higher order function, maybe it's easier for the students. So that's the approach I tend to take. Only when it's necessary, I say, oh, now let me present to you a new concept called higher order functions, which includes the idea of function as a first class citizen in a functional programming language. And then there is also this question, because for instance, when you use the enum module in Elixir, you have to learn higher order functions. At least many functions in the enum module receive a function as input. And you also know that uh, many things that you can solve by using recursion, defining a recursive functions, a recursive function. Oh, defining a recursive function, we can use enum. So should we? I remember that I watched some classes by Simon Thompson. It was a course on Erlang, and what he did was he first showed how to solve those problems using recursion, and then he said, "Oh, but you can use that." It was not enum, of course, because it was Erlang, but that that's usually my approach. I first say, oh, you can, there are some patterns that you can use by defining recursive functions, and then you can use a library that uses a higher order function, and then you don't need to use those patterns of recursion. You can use only a library and a higher order function, which these libraries are available in basically every functional programming language like Haskell, Erlang, Elixir. Oh, let me. Another question, is it necessary to explain immutability? Suppose I have in my class 10 students and 5 of them don't know what mutability is. Why should I explain to them, oh, immutability is like that? Because, of course, if the student is someone like myself that has learned Pascal or C or Java, and they know what is an array, and they know that if you assign a new number to as an element of array, it is going to mutate that data structure. But suppose that that student doesn't know. Why should I explain immutability? I can only explain how functions work, and that's it. But of course, in that case, there is this question. For instance, when you call IO puts, you are dealing with mutability. The screen changes. So yes, that's a question that I still don't have a clear answer here. When should we present the pipe operator? I know that we Elixir developers love the pipe operator, at least I do, and I believe most people love the pipe operator. But the pipe operator, it forces functions to adhere to a specific format. For instance, if you want to deal with a data structure that's going to be changed by many cascading functions, a function that calls another function, that a function that is applied to the result of another function. So in order to use the pipe operator, the first argument must be that data structure. So if we present the pipe operator as soon as possible, we can take advantage of that. When the student is going to create new functions, it says, oh, I'm going to use the pipe operator here. So the first argument is going to be this structure here, which is different, for instance, in Erlang. In Erlang, they don't follow that pattern. So my point here is that I try to present the pipe operator as soon as possible, even when it's not already clearly the necessary. It should be presented later for most of the use, but I want to have that in mind when the students are going to write their own functions, that maybe later they are going to need the pipe operator. And another question is, when should we present private functions in modules? Do we have to present private functions in modules to students, to beginners in functional programming? Maybe not. So I still don't have an answer here, but I believe I tend to leave it to as late as possible. And that's a big one too. When should we present type specs, type specifications? I'm not a big fan of types nor type specifications. Probably my students from the previous years don't know what's a type specification, because they know only in the surface, but I didn't focus on them. So, but maybe you here disagree. Oh no, you should have presented type specifications as soon as possible. And this one is related to that first one about recursion, because we know that sometimes the easiest way to define a recursive function is when you don't use tail recursion. But we know that tail recursion can be more efficient, and that's called tail call optimization. But sometimes when you use tail call optimization, the function looks strange, and the benefits, there is a web page. I'm going to leave the slides to you later. There's a link on there, Erlang. Oh, I believe I can show here. Yes, there is this, the 7 myths of Erlang performance. 2.1 myth: tail recursive functions are much faster than recursive functions. So maybe we don't have to present this in the beginning, only as later. And let me see. Yes. And another question is, when should we present lazy evaluation? Because and that's there's also another question here is, should I present lazy evaluation using Lisp or Haskell, or should I present lazy evaluation in a very, I believe it's more complicated to understand when you use the string module. Oh, again, no, my phone. I disable. Okay. So I don't think also that for beginners lazy evaluation is that useful. So I tend to postpone lazy evaluation as much as possible. And there is another question, which is how to practice. Okay, so you learn some. Of course, we're not going to wait until you learn all these concepts here to practice. Every a few you study functions as first class citizens, and then you practice. You study naming and anonymous functions, and you practice. But how? Elixir has the advantage of having a very good support on Exercism. So it's very good. They have so that's where I try to use it with my students. Remember, it's an introduction to functional programming. So Exercism is okay. But sometimes I use advent of code problems, which are not related to any language. Exercism has tracks. There is a track for Erlang, a track for Elixir, another track for Gling, but the Elixir track is more complete in features. Or maybe you have another suggestion for you. I see Dave Erson, all of them. Which one? Which which other ones? So suggest me another site. Maybe I will use it also with my students. And before finishing, I want to comment on this post by Joel Jucá. He wrote this post on Mastodon. He asked, what are the most important parts of functional programming? So you see, this post was directed to people that already know what functional programming is. So it's not, maybe for my students, it's not that relevant, but for uh, just a moment. So one of my students thought that our meeting was going to be at 2 p.m., but it's not. It's going to be 3 p.m. So immutability to avoid mutation effects. So you see, this is important only for students that already know what mutability, what mutation effects are. So what I usually say is that there are two types of beginners. There are those which are already programmers but are beginners in functional programming, and there are complete beginners. I usually try to focus on the complete beginners, but I know that most people that are interested in learning functional programming are not complete beginners. They already know how to program in some other language, some other non-functional programming language. So separation of computations, pure functions from actions, effects, impure functions. Remember when I mentioned pure functions are actually functions, and impure functions are not functions from a mathematical point of view. Regarding the previous slide, Dave Harrison said, all the practice sites, I have also used Code Wars and seen lists of katas. Higher order functions for composition and ad hoc computations. Best practice, move logic to data structures whenever possible, stateless components, servers, actors, logic whenever possible, clear distinction of pure and impure APIs, flat dependency model, avoid hierarchies, favor compositions. So you see, this is the point of view of someone which is more advanced. And that's it. Thank you very much. If you want to send a message, if you want, I'm going to put the link to this. It's already on my Twitter account, the link to these slides. I'm also on Mastodon, Adolfo Neto, @server.social, which is the Mastodon instance for Elixir and Erlang developers. And also there is my email. If later you say, oh, I think it's a good idea to do this, or oh, you forgot to mention that in your course, then you can uh, tell me what you think. In this about the presentation here, I also promised to comment. Let me click here on the, you see. So you are invited to contribute to the development of a course on functional programming that uses Elixir as its main language, and the benefits and drawbacks for teaching. So I believe the benefit is that Elixir has a very good developer experience. It's very, very good. You have live book, which is great for teaching and for learning. And the main drawback is that a it's not a pure functional programming language. It's not like Haskell. But I believe that, as I said, it's only an introduction, so it's okay for me. So I wait for your insights, for your questions, and maybe I can change my course here. And that's it. Let me I'm going to let me see the chat first. With complete programming beginners, the most important thing is to do something easy and fun. Yes, Bruce Tate has this approach, and he usually puts students to learn how to develop a game. He's very good finding games that can be used that they can implement. There's so much to learn, starting from using a command line or IDE, multiple files, etc. Okay, let me stop sharing the screen, just in case that someone wants to. Okay, thanks a lot for this presentation. How does having a purely delegating contest? Oh no, this is the older question. And Dave said that applies to learning pretty much anything. It has to be fun. Okay, if you have any questions, I wait. If not, I can pass the word to Simon.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the time. Since it seems like you had to postpone some students' meeting, I guess you have a very busy schedule. So thank you very much for giving another presentation here on our Careers and Meetups. We can still wait some seconds to see if someone is typing the question. And maybe one question from me. Do you see that the students enjoy learning Elixir more than other programming languages? Did you notice this kind of behavior or not really?
Oh, sorry.
Yes. So the question.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. So the question is, did you maybe notice that students enjoy learning Elixir more than other languages or not really?
So I can't say anything about that because that's the only language I teach. It's Elixir. In my university there is the students, they learn C, maybe C++, maybe Java, but I mean this course is called, how do you say it, when the students can choose to take it or not. So I don't know, most of the students don't learn Elixir. That's a fact. They just learn C and C++ and Java. And so I have no basis to compare this. Oh, and also this course is open to people from other universities, people which are not studying in any university. So I can't say anything. What I can say is that we know from the Elixir community that many people love Elixir, and also that I know there are many people that are currently working with other languages, but that they want to work with Elixir, and that's it. Oh, yeah, Dave said, oh, it's an elective, exactly. It's elective.
Okay. So I think that's it for today. I think there are no further questions. So thank you very much for all of you that joined today, and see you next time. And of course, when I say see you next time, you can already register for another meetup edition on our Curiosum.com website. Thanks, and see you.